Cool. So we've got our instancing, we've got our sim running pretty well now. Now let's try to actually play with some of the parameters. We've kind of just been coasting off the ones we set, except for playing around, I guess, with the force. And we did change that glue outside up to 1 from 0. But let's do wedging now. And you might remember wedging from my other series on the pyro stuff. And basically, wedging is a really powerful tool that you do over in your output driver land. And wedging will change a parameter. It'll run multiple sims. So in our case, it could drive our simulation cache, do let's say 5 of them. And for each one that it does, it will change one parameter. So when it's done, you'll have 5 different sims with 5 different values for some parameter, and you can compare them and choose the one you like the most. So let us put the P here so we can actually kind of see it. And like that. I don't want to lose my control panel yet because I know I'm going to need it in a minute. The whole point of the wedge is that it drives some other output thing. And an output thing could be, it's an output driver. It could be a mantra, meaning a rendered image. It could be a geometry driver, which means that it's writing geometry, often from a sim or something. Even the sim caches themselves have inside of them a output driver. It's a ROP output driver, which is essentially just a geometry ROP, like the one that I just created a moment ago. In fact, this is the one that we're going to drive. So for output driver here, I'm going to drag this guy into here. Isn't that weird? I'm actually driving something from the inside of this OTL into this guy over here. Cool. So what else we have in here? We don't want to do random samples. We have a very strict idea of what we want to do. I want to have it wedge certain parameters. What is the parameter I want to do? Well, I want to do 5 different values from 0 to, well, what I often do is I say copy parameter, paste it here, and subtract 1. That way, if I ask for 5 steps, the steps will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So as I change this, if I say, I don't know, I want 9 different values. 0 to 8 is 9 different values. So I do want 5 different ones. So 0 to 4 is appropriate. Now where those values go? Well, they get driven in on this channel here. So some channel is going to be changed to that, and I want to use the control panel for that. So I'm going to set up another integer here. And this one I'll put like a little cool separator bar. And I'm going to say current wedge. Let's call it wedge. Great. So this current wedge will be what we drive. So I'll drag that down to channel. And this is a little weird. You'll have to say channel reference, which is fine. But this syntax means read from that. That's not what we want. We want to just have the path. We are actually going to set that path from here. So there's no quotes, there's no nothing. It's just the path to that parameter. So when we run this wedge, it's going to run this driver, but it's going to change this value first, to be 0 the first time, 1 the second time, and so on. The reason why I like to set, the control panel one here, because now I can have multiple nodes reference this thing. On the wedge itself, you only get to drive one channel from this range here. Whereas if I set it here, now I could, in theory, have multiple things referencing it. Now, as it turns out in this case, I only need to drive one thing. I only have one thing in mind anyway. And that's this glue outside business. We discovered that one worked pretty well, and that's great. But we don't really know, something else might work better. So I'm going to copy, or I'm going to just drag this guy to here. And we'll say channel reference as usual. And it's thinking about that long and hard. And I'm going to disable the sim for a moment. So now it's reading 0 from this. What we actually want, I want to try powers of 10. I want to try, we have 1, which is fine, and I'll let it do that again. And I'll say raise the power of 10 to whatever the wedge is. So as you can imagine, when it's 0, 10 to the 0 is 1. When wedge is 1, it's 10 to the 1 is 10, 10 to the 2 is 100, and 10 to the 3 is 1,000. And actually we go up to 4 because my wedge is going from 0 to 4. So we're going to try the values that we just saw there. And we'll see what we like the most. Maybe 10,000 will be too strong and nothing will break apart. Maybe we'll like the relative weakness. But this is a great way, especially if you're at a studio, you can have a different machine. Different farm machines could render the different wedges. Or if you don't have a render farm at your disposal, you could still do this overnight and just say, like, I don't know, do 10 different sims. I'll look at it in the morning and we'll see which one we like. Cool. So that's really about it. So let's just turn this back on. It's going to write, no, one more major thing. I almost forgot. Let's make sure this is still copied. We don't want to write over the same file every time. So let's go here and say version. We can keep the version thing there, and that's fine. But let's add another subdirectory. Let's make wedge paste copied references. Cool. So now when we have this thing here, this wedge will also update from there. That way we're not overwriting the same sim every time. That would be a huge waste of time. So we have the sim version and the wedge version. Maybe the sim version will refer to major changes in the overall structure of what we're doing, and the wedge will just be for the, the testing to find out some parameter or so. Great. So without further ado, let's just go to this wedge and say on the top, like most of these drivers, render wedges. So this will take a little while, and I will see you when it's done.